Hello everyone and welcome back to the Red Path. In today's video, we are going to be talking about the Master of Executions. Alright, what is up everyone? Jamie and Dara back after a small little bit of a hiatus, lots of real life stuff going on. We are back making videos for you wonderful folks. And today it's going to be quite a spicy one, a controversial one, some might say.
Yeah, definitely.
We're going to be talking about our new favorite unit, who we used to love to hate and now we hate to love. The Master of
Basically, yeah,
Executions.
yeah.
Yeah. What an awesome dude. I guess over the last, I don't know, what, month or two, we've both been, well, not just the two of us, quite a few people have been
Yeah.
having a lot of success with this fun little elite character unit that has been going around the list in various iterations, various relics, various warlord traits put on him, and lots of people have been seeing success with quite an unusual unit choice. So, Jamie, what do you think about the Master of Executions?
I mean, yeah, you basically hit the nail on the head there. We used to love to hate this guy. We actually even did a video where we discussed the Master of Executions and the Chosen and could they work, and we ended up making some functionality out of the Chosen, and I don't feel that the Mo was ever truly useful in 8th edition. Not for us. Now, he had some amazing builds, I think, for Emperor's Children and maybe a couple other legions. For us, he never felt great, and the reason for that is I've got his old data sheet here. So let's make sure this is the right one. Yeah. So his stats are basically the same as they are now. Strength 4, toughness 4. I think he's gained in it, yeah, because he was 4 wounds. He had a bolt pistol. His axe of dismemberment was strength times 2, minus 3, d3 damage, and a wound roll of 6 did 1 additional mortal. And then he had Trophy Taker, which was re-roll a hit, a wound, or a damage against a character. And then he had the 6-inch heroic intervention against characters only. He was 60 points, but like I said, it was other legions which could really make use of him. Now, he's jumped up. He's 65 base, but as a World Eater, you have to pay the 15-point Mark of Khorne tax, which actually doesn't really feel like much of a tax on him. Because, like I said, he has gone up a wound and a base attack. He still has the bolt pistol and the axe of dismemberment, but the axe of dismemberment now will put him at strength 7, and that will become 8 for the Mark of Khorne, which is quite significant. Minus 3, flat 2 damage, and a hit roll of a 6 does 2 mortal wounds instead of normal damage, which is really good. Like you're rolling that chain back 1 roll, so you've got the maximum. He'll be running 7 attacks standard as a World Eater on the charge. You're probably getting at least 1 6 in there, like mathematically, right? You're getting a 6.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe you get
statistically, yeah, you get 1, but realistically, whenever I seem to roll it, I get like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I'm just like, all right, this guy pops off.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like crazy vibes.
And he does get just basically a standard 6-inch heroic now. It's not quite worded like that. I think maybe there's a few interactions where it doesn't work or something. I haven't been able to figure out why they don't just say he's got a 6-inch heroic. But
as far as I'm aware, isn't it basically like if there is a character there, he has to go to the character?
Yes, it's something like that. Yeah, I don't want to drill down into it too much, but yeah, I think that is the science of it. And he can re-roll the wound roll against enemy characters. Now, for a 20-point upgrade, I think this is very reasonable. He's very strong. And okay, I'm going to ask you what you think, but my thoughts are the reason he's shining so much for me is because our army just went up in elite status so much with this new book. We lost probably 2 or 3 units on our tabletop overall just because we're paying all the extra points for everything. Everything's tougher and more resilient, blah blah blah. But now it's harder to get those trades in. It feels like. I mean, I feel worse now trading a squad of 5 berserkers than I did, 3 or 4 months ago. But the Mo at 80 points, he's probably going to pick up most anything. Like certainly up to about 150 points. Like he's just going to chew through things in that sort of like 50 to 150 point range and can reliably do a lot of damage and more than that. How do you feel about him as a trade piece?
Yeah, I think he fulfills an interesting role that I suppose formerly in our eighth edition rule set would have been like something like a cheap lord with a relic upgrade or something that goes in, like a
Yeah.
Gorefather lord, for example,
Yes.
that just goes in and blends and is quickly traded out. And then you've kind of seen similar units crop up in other codexes in ninth edition, like the early doors. We had the Dark Eldar Succubus, who could do
Mm.
a very, very similar thing where she was doing two mortals on hit rolls of sixes. So this is basically the same thing. It's just a very cheap trade piece that you can kind of launch out of a vehicle. He'll go in there, he's fairly reliable, he could spike really hard as well, and just proc off a load of mortal wounds. And like it's kind of like if he dies, you don't really care so much as long as he doesn't do something terribly useless and
Yeah.
doesn't give his life away for nothing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there is like a lot of interesting use out of him these days. Just basically, like you said, as like a cheaper value kind of unit in an army that like things are generally much higher value now, and it's harder to actually trade out and make effective trades happen. Especially into like he's so good for like just going to an objective that has like a really cheap unit, or like the sort of thing that you're like, oh, I don't really want to put a full berserker squad into that, but you can
Right.
put a master of executions into it, no problem.
Um, I know what my answer is, and I'm fairly confident I know what your answer is here. I do feel that if you're running a Mo, you possibly want to consider a CP on them. You don't have to; they're perfectly fine without. But I'm really enjoying an upgrade. But I feel that you've got you've kind of coined a term for one of your favourite upgrades, right?
Yeah, the gorgeous Mo.
Yeah.
So that's like the master with the Gorget of Eternal Hatred. So it gives him a 4+ invulnerable, which because he lacks an invul normally, which is a bit of a problem. Gives him a 2 up armor save as well, which is nice, and then he kind of blows up when he dies as well for some mortal wounds around him, which is cool. It's nice to make him a little bit more resilient. I think more recently I'm leaning towards, I believe it's Hatred Incarnate or something like that.
Yeah.
Gives him more strength, more attacks, and I think he can re-roll his hits
Yeah.
on the turn he charges. So then you can kind of fish for those sixes a little bit better as well. So that kind of makes it changes it. So with the Gorget, he's basically like he might actually live and keep going and do other things. And with the Hatred Incarnate, he is basically a nuclear missile who is definitely going to kill the thing that he goes into.
The Hatred is how I've been running it. I've tried the Gorget, I've tried Zal, and I'm using Hatred right now. The Gorget, I really like that build. I think if I had the CP, I'd run that and Hatred, like on 2 separate ones. Because when I have used the Gorget, like he literally survived a round of counterfire or shooting in combat against him and got 2 fight activations, which is generally like kind of not expected for a World Eater's character. Like we normally have to throw them in to trade up, and just if they survive it's great, but you don't expect it most of the time. And then I did try Zal, but I think we talked about that, and it wasn't truly efficient because you're hoping to lose the wound rolls because you want those 6s to hit. So then you're getting less efficiency out of the wound roll with the extra D3 damage. And I feel Zal goes better on maybe a Prince or a Disco Lord anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
If you're going to take it. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm still coming down from a cold. But Hatred is how I've been running it. And I really like it because it gives him an extra attack and an extra strength, which puts him up to strength 9 at -3. So he's basically hitting you with a las cannon, more or less. The extra attack obviously slightly buffs the chances of getting those mortal wounds to proc. And re-rolling hits further enhances that. Like if you absolutely need to fish, because you're hitting on 2s, you're going to re-roll the 1s through 5s. If you need to get those mortal wounds through.
Yeah, 100%. If you really need to make a desperate play, you can fish so hard with him.
Yeah, it's really solid, and just seems to do work. Like in every game, like last night, I played the dwarves, and I think it was the Hatred Mo went into the Iron Herjar champion or something. He's like their big Terminator, like murder machine, and I think it was 3 6s just off the initial roll. I was like, oh, he's got 6
He's
wounds.
just gone.
He's dead.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
and just no opportunity. it was just, it felt really good because that was a great trade for him. And then my other one, the unbuffed Mo, went in and killed the I think he killed the Jarl or whatever they're called. Whatever, they killed something. They both traded really well. They were definitely my best performing units from a points wise trade. So we have to eat our words, man.
100%. I'm so ready. Yeah, like he's just a nice little nuclear missile. Is the way I'm using him now.
Yes.
In a world where it's actually very difficult for us to give away our characters for kind of a low cost opportunity, he fills that role really well, and he can just be a really nice accompaniment with a berserker squad as well.
Yeah.
Just jump out with them and kind of be like, oh hey, what's up? And a lot of the time he's often a unit that kind of jumps out of a transport before a berserker squad for me, because I'll be like, oh, I'll give away the Moan this turn and it's not really a big deal, you know, but I don't want to give away berserkers just yet. He can soften things up, and like you said, a lot of the time he can just go into an exposed character or maybe a couple of squads or whatever, and you just spike those sixes and you're like, cool, it's just gone. It doesn't matter, it's gone, you know. And yeah, he's a good source of mortal wounds for us in an army where it is very difficult to find mortal wounds as well. So
yeah,
lots of good stuff from him.
I just want to like kind of like tie it up there. Like you just briefly mentioned the transport. What I'm running is the Dreadclaw, 8 Berserkers and 2 Moes in the Dreadclaw. Typically, obviously that isn't set in stone because the opponent and mission might change that. But something that's in my head is the Dreadclaw drops down, Berserkers jump out, form like a screen. The Mo gets out and leaves just enough room because of the 6-inch heroic. You can actually sit back on the objective, and he can heroic straight across. You know, you measure it so if the opponent just tiptoes on that objective, they're in Mo territory, and it's quite a good formidable deterrent. Of course, you know, Berserkers aren't the best screen, but that's what I've got to put OBSEC on a point. Any more final tips or thoughts on the Mo before we wrap this one up?
I think the best way to use him is to have him in those situations where he is jumping out of transports, like be it the Dreadclaw play, like you mentioned, or coming out of rhinos or drills or whatever. Like, he really does see the best value when he is kind of being slingshotted out of those sort of things. People tend to just forget about him as well. It's like a hangover thing from 8th edition where everyone thought he was useless, and he was. And now he's not, and people just aren't really there. Their sort of minds haven't kind of clicked into that new thing. Like for your opponent is what I mean. They're basically like, who is this guy? You know, does he have a model? Whatever. I can't remember this guy. And they're like, oh, funny World Leader player. He's bringing the execution guy, whatever. Yeah. And then he just like walks in and he bodies like someone, and they're like, oh shit, that's a problem. So yeah, the 6-inch heroic is really, really good too. Playing around that, like the way that you're doing it, it's really cool. There's a couple of different ways you can play around it too, and people have to move around it in specific ways then. So then it really comes down to the customization. Like, do you want to give them relics? Do you want to give them warlord traits? I would be disinclined to go any more than like 1 on him. You know, like spending 2 CP on the Mo,
not on a
probably not worth
sure,
it.
No.
But yeah, it's really interesting. He's a really cool chassis to build on, and it seems that a lot of relics and warlord traits actually work quite well on him as well. So that's quite cool. But yeah, overall for me, he's probably like a 4-star unit out of 5. You know, in my opinion. Yeah, like he's had rough games for me where he hasn't really done much, and that's. Yeah. But even then, I don't really care because I'm like, oh, he was like 80 points, whatever. You know, it's not a big deal. Which is like kind of why I like him as well. If he underperforms, I'm just like, oh, whatever, it's fine. Yeah, you know,
he's not much more than a squad of cultists points wise. Like it's hard for him to trade down because if your opponent is shooting at him, they're not shooting something else that perhaps matters more. And if they're shooting him, you know, with pistols or whatever, that means he's already got into combat and probably taken, you know, his pound of flesh. So I think really, basically my sort of like closing advice is everyone should be trying the Master of Executions. I think this is genuinely a very strongly recommended unit for competitive World Eaters, competitive CSM in general, sure. But with him being an elite and us typically having access to 6 elites, you know, we can spam. Like, we can throw 1 or 2 in there easily, 3 if you're really feeling feisty. But I definitely recommend everyone give him a try.
Yeah, 100%. I think like you've got nothing to lose by running him out, seeing how he does, and if it works for you, great. But yeah, like I put him in as kind of a joke into a list a while ago, and since then he's been to two tournaments with me.
Yeah.
Has performed consistently well across two events. He will be coming with me to Coventry. Like I find it very hard not to bring him now. He just sees so much value in my list and stuff. And just like having him in a transport with the Berserkers to hop out, it's an extra asset.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the time you have stuff jumping out of a transport and you're like, man, if I just had one more thing to bring out and go somewhere else, it would be so good.
Yeah.
Or if I had one thing that I could hold back for another turn. Like he does a lot of the time allow you to hold back a 5-man Berserker squad, which is really, really useful. But yeah, I just highly recommend giving him a go, see how he works for you, see if you find a way of customizing him that we haven't quite noticed as well, and see a new little hack.
Let us know in the comments your thoughts on the Master of Executions, any tips and tricks you've got. But yeah, I think that about wraps it up from us, doesn't it?
Sounds great, yeah.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Well, let us know in the comments. Come join the Discord, all the normal stuff. Until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and kill Main Bow.